Welcome to Uncomfortable, conversations about culture and Christianity. My name is Eric, and today I'm joined by Jess.
Hello, world.
And Alex.
Happy to be here.
All right, we're all here.
All happy?
We're all happy. We're all happy to be here.
We're happy.
Last week, we asked you to play along with us as we answered the question, what grade would we want to relive if we could relive any grade from school? And we got a couple fan reactions, a couple listeners post comments on Facebook, and let's see what Andrew had to say. He said, "High school, my senior year, lol, got into a fight, told teacher off 2 weeks before graduation. I was also manager for the girls basketball team. That was awesome. I also helped film the games." So.
Andrew.
That sounds like a really eventful year.
I cannot wait to have Andrew on the podcast.
Yeah, he's a friend.
Traveling
He's
around.
definitely a friend of our podcast.
Yeah, I love that the year he got in a fight with a teacher was one he wants to relive. That's good.
He told off a teacher?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Then
Must have been good.
we also got one from Ellery, says
Yay.
junior or senior year. Great friends all around, really plugged into high school with swim team and color guard, really plugged into youth group. Just a fun time all around.
Ellery, if you're listening, you got to pick one though. You can't just say junior or senior year.
Yeah, you kind of bent
Which
the rules.
Sounds good, though.
Both of them went with the upper, like the last kind of laps around the track for school. So
Yeah. And so continuing in this tradition, we really thought it was fun to hear your responses. We're going to answer another question today. And we hope that if you're listening right now, that you'll consider, sending us your answer to this question as well. And maybe you'll be featured on the Uncomfortable podcast.
yeah, you can put that in your LinkedIn once you are.
Yeah, it's very impressive. All right, Alex, you've got a random question generator here.
do.
This one
We don't even know what it is.
Nobody knows.
Nobody. I got to click.
Okay.
All right, here comes the click. Click. Nope, it didn't go. Oh, man, my clicking. All right. What is the best compliment you've ever received? What is the best compliment you have ever
received?
Yes, Jess.
Can I
what
pick
is it?
two?
Oh, wow.
Best
Can I pick
compliment
two?
you've ever...
Okay, you can go. She's playing by Ellery's rules. It's fine. Just
You pick two, and then we'll tell you which is more true.
Okay. Both have been probably in the last year or two, but I just feel like they're very encouraging to me. One was like being genuinely told like you're a good mom and you're like doing a great job. And then the other one for me has been someone coming up to me and just being like, you're doing the right thing, like you're good at what you do, and like you're a great counselor. And so I don't know, that's
affirming
just
you
been,
as a mom
yes.
and affirming you as a
Yes,
in your
that has
profession.
been like, it was very life-giving and encouraging at the time. So bam, those two came to me when you said that.
Okay.
I expected to struggle, but
I'm still thinking, so Eric, I hope you have
no.
one.
I was still
I
thinking.
could compliment you both.
Oh, I'm trying to think of a compliment. What is the question again? What was
Best
the
compliment
best
you've ever
compliment
received?
you've ever received? I'm trying to. I mean, like ever.
That's difficult.
I'm trying to.
I think that I just answered that, so you guys have to answer it exactly how it is. The best compliment you've ever received. Maybe it's recently.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, words of affirmation is definitely part of my love language, and so I think who it's from matters, and so it's probably like from one of my parents, like my dad, telling me I'm a good dad, and he's proud of me. So I think not necessarily like you're so funny or things like that, but I think like who it's from and the heart behind it matters, and so. I think like that, something like that is when when you're striving to make someone proud and they recognize it. So that's probably one of the best I've received. So
It's good. Mine was probably you're really good at arguing with people on Facebook, and I said thank you.
that's a skill not a lot of people have.
I don't know if I have a skill. No, I can't.
You do.
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I think the parenting things are always nice, but it feels a little premature. I'm like, they're
The jury's still out.
they're too young to done anything too terrible, so I don't know yet. But it's tough. I think the thing about compliments is, like you said, Alex, it really does depend on who it's coming from and what that what it means. That makes the moment, right? Like, is it impactful? Does it mean that much to me? But yeah, I don't know.
I think sometimes unprompted ones too, like when it's somebody that comes up to you to recognize as something you did that you don't know either. And you're like, there's been moments where like, I just felt like trash about a sermon or whatever. And then someone comes up and they're like, man, God really used that. And you don't know who they are. And you're like, holy cow, I needed that because I felt like that was a dumpster fire. So I think either someone I'm really close to or someone that it's totally unsolicited or that's not a part of their job is like to compliment me and, keep rooting me on, like a coach or things like that. And so I think that's also meaningful too.
Yeah. That photo you took for social media was really good. That was a good one I got.
That's
Words
awesome.
matter.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'd love to hear what your best compliment is. So go ahead and share that in the comments if you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, or send us an email.
Don't be afraid to compliment us.
Yeah, if you have a compliment. I obviously really need one. I'm struggling.
These
Maybe
two,
you could be our best
guys.
We're just soliciting compliments now. Please tell me how nice my shirt looks today. So I really like this shirt a lot. Yeah, but before we jump into the headlines, quick Kanye update. Donda, Soldier Field, August 26th. That's what we're looking at right now.
Is he living there?
I don't know if he's living there.
Okay.
Maybe we're getting an album. I don't know. I just got to keep the people updated. I know people are concerned.
I do.
Kanye
I'm invested.
Yeah, 2021. All right, up next, we've got headlines. Our first headline comes from the Hastings Tribune. Congratulations to them for making it onto the podcast.
We have a listener from Hastings.
Do we?
Yeah.
Wow.
So Christian Yost, he listens
What up,
pretty
Christian?
much weekly.
All right.
And so he wants to be on the podcast, I think. Sometimes.
Shining moment. Hastings becomes second Nebraska team to advance to the LLWS. What's that stand for?
What does that
Little
mean?
League World Series. They made it, and with some pretty epic fashion. So they were kind of trending this week with a diving catch that one of the youngsters made to get them into the regional final against Iowa. So they beat Iowa, which is always fun, and then played South Dakota to get themselves to Pennsylvania for the Little League World Series. They're going to be on ESPN. Yay! So
Wow. So it's a lot of pressure to put on a kid to just be like, you're going to be on TV. Everyone's going to watch you. I mean, my son's 10, but when he's 13, he can start entering Fortnite competitions. So I'm really hoping to bank pretty big on that. So when that's kind of that's his college fund. He knows that. But do you think this is healthy pressure for a kid?
How old are these kids?
So 10 to 12. So
10
the
to
cutoff
12.
is 12 years old.
Okay.
I don't remember. I mean, it's always when you're born, and things like that for how, if you can turn 13 in the middle of it or not. I don't know. So.
When your birth date is.
I mean, I played Little League growing up, and I think as a little kid, you would always love to be able to get into the Little League World Series. I mean, it's kind of a pipe dream to get into that, and it's, American teams, and then there's literally teams that represent other countries, and so...
Big deal.
It is. It's a huge deal, I think, as a little kid, because it's one of your only chances to kind of make it big at that age before, you maybe get to college and then get into the pros, and so... It's fun.
It's a lot of pressure on kids in sports.
Yeah.
I never understood that, but it's just like
none on your son.
Well, and this is then on television.
I hope that my sarcasm probably didn't play well on there, but I will. Yeah, it's good to make a note. I was being sarcastic about that, but I was kind of joking at maybe at the expense of some of these parents who, I mean, I guess you hear about the dads who are like, okay, they were born and I was ready to start training them at a very young age, and it's just so much pressure. I don't know. And maybe it's good, right? I mean, maybe that's good to have that discipline, but it seems it's like winning the lottery to get into professional athletes or to become a professional athlete. So it just seems the odds are not really in your favor a lot of times to bank your whole child's future on this, but I don't know.
Yeah, which I think is different. And I also think, I mean, this being from Hastings, right, Nebraska, small town, like the pool of players that you have in something like this comparatively to like some larger metro areas and things like that. I think it's really exciting news for like, I imagine if you are from Hastings, Nebraska, I even have some pride just being from Nebraska, but like it's probably like the biggest deal that's happened in like a decade in Hastings to know, hey, those kids, and these are going to probably be local legends, like these kids for their entire lives to like be the team from Hastings. I mean, if you're a team from Chicago, and there have been several, that's even from Omaha, but like I can imagine they probably go to the same school, like all that kind of stuff. So there's probably a little bit of a different, the pressure's definitely there, but like the celebration and the fun and probably depends on if they're expected to win it or not and how that goes. So the magical run.
It's not the same as getting like a blue ribbon pig at the state fair or something.
No.
It's a bigger deal. All right.
Are you going to watch?
I'll probably, depending on when the games are, I think their first game's tomorrow. So I'm not. It's not going to be something I sit down and I'm not doing anything else and watch like a Husker game, but it will be like probably background noise.
Checking in.
My wife is heading out of town this weekend. I should note as well. So I will be fully running around with all 4 kids myself, and so
passive entertainment.
Yes, it'll be very passive entertainment. So
gotcha. All right.
Good times.
All right. Well, coming up, we have a segment on Afghanistan and what's going on over there. We didn't figure we would do it justice to cover it in headlines, even though it is definitely part of the headlines. Alex had the opportunity to meet with someone who wanted to remain anonymous and have a conversation, someone that could actually give us a lot more insight. They have lived there before, and we hope that it's helpful for everyone listening to better understand the situation. I think there's a lot of hot takes out there on the internet right now where people are just reacting to it because that's the nature of the world we live in society today. But anyways, that is coming up next.
So today I'm joined by someone who's become a friend, and we've had some conversations about this over the last couple years, specifically this area, and they've helped me understand more about Afghanistan and just some of the things that have happened there culturally as well as historically. And so when all of this stuff was coming out in the news, I reached out to this family that I know and trust, and because I know they've lived there, and so who we're talking to spent some time living in Afghanistan. Actually, them and their spouse met there totally separately, but then now they're living in the States, but have deep connections and ties, a heart for the people there, and I know have been wrestling through just a lot of stuff over the last few days, grieving, lamenting, praying deeply. And so because of security reasons, we're not going to mention any names here. You're not going to see any faces, but just want to welcome this gentleman to the podcast just to share a little bit about Afghanistan and just hopefully end this with some ways to better understand, some more empathy, some more actual direct ways to pray for the people. I know they've been in contact with people that are on the ground, people that have been able to escape. And so just bring some more light to the situation, and really teach us how to pray here. So I think it'd be helpful. First, my first question is just help us understand some of the history, and we're not going to get into politically charged things and say who's wrong, who's right, but help us just understand some of the history of that leads up to an event like we're seeing unfold right now.
Yeah, so I think one of the first things to understand, Afghanistan has had more conflict than almost anywhere else on earth in the last 60 years. And 60 years is just an arbitrary cutoff time. There has been war and conflict and violence in Afghanistan for thousands of years. So the country of Afghanistan that we know now really starts in about 1747, and it's really what geopolitical people call a buffer state. It was in between Russia and England, not necessarily those two countries, but those two empires. And it is very geographically, religiously, ethnically diverse. The people of the country, the Afghan people, are in some ways like America. There's a huge melting pot of different languages, different ethnic groups. The Pashtuns are the largest ethnic group. They're pretty much all Sunni Muslims. They're about 60% of the country. They typically live in the southern areas of the country. Kandahar is one of the big Pashtun cities, and then all the way over into the east into Pakistan. There are other smaller ethnic groups like the Hazaras, the Tajiks, the Uzbeks. Those are all in between 10 and 20%, and the sizes of the country go down from there. The Pashtuns are the bulk of the traditional Taliban. When you see images of Taliban on the news, those people are probably Pashtun. Now, the word Talib means student. Taliban basically means students. And they really sprung out of a young Pashtun religious student group in about 1994, 1996. And they actually gained power in a lot of Afghanistan with the support of the people, because the warlords that were fighting over Afghanistan at that time were just brutal, corrupt, terrible people. And initially, the Taliban were really seen as not corrupt. They were seen as fair. They were seen as running a good justice system. And so in a lot of areas of Afghanistan, the people actually welcomed them in and supported them as they fought against these warlords. So they ruled the country for a couple years. And then 2001, September 11th happens. Right after it happens, the U.S. tries to pressure the Taliban to give over Osama bin Laden and kick al-Qaeda out of the country. They couldn't do it. That failed. And so the U.S. went for other measures. Pakistan helps the U.S. bring back a bunch of the allies from the fights against the Soviets in the 80s, who end up being a lot of the warlords that the people had wanted to get rid of. The U.S. gives these warlords a lot of money, supplies, and air support to defeat the Taliban. 2001, there's not a whole lot of U.S. troops involved in the invasion of Afghanistan. In a lot of cases, the Taliban just withdrew, said, we will go away and fight another day, or people that were supporting them switched sides and said, okay, we'll go over to these US-backed forces. And fighting in Afghanistan in 2001, there's really not a lot of it. It's really over pretty fast. You may have seen images of destroyed countryside in 2001, but that isn't from the US invasion. That's from everything that had been happening over the last 20, 40, 100 years.
Gotcha. And so what's kind of led up to this happening? So, and you said the last 60 years, I think really there's been a lot of turmoil, but America's not the first country that's come in and really tried to help this country, and help with conflict and all of those types of things. But what's led up to, the specifics of right now, and then kind of the American involvement, us, removing our troops from there, and kind of historically from 2001 to now?
Yeah, I mean, so the U.S. has... Americans have been tired of the war in Afghanistan, and the U.S., for a lot of reasons, doesn't want to continue to be there. In part because the Pashtun people are a very patient people, and Afghanistan is their home, and they say, we will just wait out the Americans. We waited out the Soviets. We waited out the British. We'll just wait out the Americans. So the Taliban has been preparing for the U.S. to leave for 15, 20 years at this point. So there's a lot of bad stuff that's happening right now. We can blame Joe Biden and his administration for what's happening right now, but they inherited a lot of choices that the Trump administration made, who inherited a lot of choices that the Obama administration made, we can go all the way back. I was thinking about it. Ford is the last president that I can think of that didn't make some major Afghan related policy decision that has had obviously negative repercussions. I mean, just in Afghanistan's history, we can talk more about the British and Russia. We can talk about the Durand line between India and Afghanistan. We can talk about Pakistan's ISI. We can talk about the Mujahideen.
Yeah.
I can even make an argument that Nebraska football fans hate Miami because of Afghanistan and losing the Rose Bowl in '83 when the farm crisis was kicked off by stuff happening in Afghanistan. What has happened at this point now, and I don't want to be too specific because everything in the ground is changing so fast.
Yeah.
But what it really seems like is the Americans panicked and didn't really plan what they were going to do for the evacuation. And that panicked a number of people in Afghanistan. And then a lot of the Afghan political actors said, America's pulling out. How do we personally survive in the future? And there's been a lot of people changing sides, and the Taliban army did not take over Kabul in the last week. The Afghan army, for whatever reason, there's a ton of speculation, said we are not going to contest this, and the Afghan government basically said, well, we're leaving, so you guys get it.
Yeah, so that's helpful to know some of the history. So what are just some of the common misunderstandings, I think, of this region, of what is happening over there, that we can understand? Because I think right now we're seeing a lot of images, we're seeing a lot of Twitter, we're seeing a lot of political leaders, church leaders, a lot of people jumping on and horrendous images that we're seeing over there. There's things that are happening there that are painful and worth grieving and are terrible. But then, like you say, we want to blame somebody. We're quick to grieve for 5 seconds, I think, as Americans, and then blame everybody and point fingers. But what are some of the pieces of maybe miscommunication you've seen over the last few days personally, and just historically that lead to some of the biases we have or the negative things we have going on here?
Yeah, I mean, I think that first off, the Taliban that are coming and taking over are saying, we are going to give amnesty, we are going to let everyone who fought against us be not attacked, we're not going to do anything. And the media may be reporting that, but the Taliban have shown that they lie, and that is not a credible promise. They, whatever they were when they started in the 90s, they have shown that they are not good people now. So this has been very peaceful, not very peaceful, but there has not been pitched battles fighting in Kabul right now, but there has been that happening in other parts of the country. It's just harder to see that from Western media because European reporters are in Kabul. And so they're reporting on what's happening in Kabul. Things that I've seen from Afghan media sources, other parts of the country, the Taliban are back like they were in the 90s, where human rights violations, public executions, just brutal behavior is happening. So we may not see that right now, but it is happening. It's hard to really follow what's going on if you're just reading Western media sources, because they're only in Kabul and they're not necessarily reporting a lot. When you look, the Pashtun media in Afghanistan is saying, oh, the Taliban have changed, maybe this is going to be okay. And the Hazara and Tajik, the other minority voices, they're really concerned. I think one of the other things that I've seen is people need to understand Afghanistan was like this a month ago, and this seems to us who are in America and who maybe don't follow the news like, oh, this happened really suddenly. How could this happen? But it was like this a month ago. It's been like this for a long time. It will likely continue to be like this unless something drastic like the hearts of the people are captured by Jesus and changed happens. I think one of the other misunderstandings is that there are no Afghan Christians. There is a very small house church network and very small networks of believers in Afghanistan. They are trying to be very bold and trying to understand what they should do. And we definitely need to pray for them, especially in this return of the Taliban era.
Yeah, and we're hearing, I think, reports, especially from Christian leaders, that are getting some of the message out that their name, they're being tracked, that their names have been turned in, that there's threats that they're, coming after them, and so there's really detrimental persecution that's on the horizon and happening to Christians, in this. But that's historically been the case as well, right? I mean, it didn't just happen this week.
Yeah, and that didn't just happen this week, and it's not like Afghan Christians are going from some paradise of utopia where they could be fully free to express and share their faith. It was very difficult to be in a Christian Afghanistan before the Taliban.
Yeah, but this is even elevated. It seems like a little bit more with them being in power. So I think just to move on, to help us understand how we should pray, how we should feel, because I think as I'm reading social media, there's just a lot of people, I've seen a lot of posts, like, especially from Christians, that are, I don't even know how to pray, and I've even literally seen posts like, "Dear God," and then you've got like the letter board there and a bunch of letters there, because I don't know how to pray. And I think that's one of the gifts of the Holy Spirit, who promises to pray and groan when we don't understand. But what are some ways, based on your understanding, the people you're talking to, that are leading us to what they're asking for, how we should be praying for them specifically?
Yeah. So Afghan believers that we know have been asking us to pray for visa approval as they're trying to get out of the country. Yeah. Pray for flights to continue from Kabul so that people can exit the country. The Taliban have seized a lot of the border crossings, the land border crossings, and so flights are expensive. There's not a lot of them, and people are trying to exit the country over land to get to other countries. So prayer for people going through border crossings, that the Taliban will let them pass through. Like we said, there is an Afghan house church network, and some of those church leaders have met together, prayed together, and said, we will stay in this country and we will continue work that we are doing to help our fellow Afghans and show the love of Jesus to our countrymen. CCC just got done with a series on the Sermon on the Mount, and these are ways that we can pray for. Take the Beatitudes and take those blessings and pray that over people in Afghanistan, over the church in Afghanistan, praying for peacemakers to be the sons of God and to bring peace to that country, and for people to be comforted as they mourn. And I mean, taking a piece of scripture like that and praying that over people is powerful. Another thing that you can do is go to a news story and print out a picture of an Afghan and pray over that person. If it's got a name, pray over that person. Even or especially print out a picture of someone from the Taliban and pray for them, because they are lost. Like those Taliban fighters, those Taliban officials, they need Jesus too. So print out a picture of an Afghan or something. Write someone's name down that you read a story in the newspaper, and pray specifically for that person. One of the things that my wife said that she's been thinking about is while she's rocking our small child to go to sleep, that she thinks about Afghan mothers who want to do the same thing, to just rock their child to sleep in safety and peace. And so she's praying for Afghan mothers then. And we can pray with the church in those ways for people specifically.
Yeah, that's so good. And I think that's helpful. I think one of our American flaws is, this isn't the only devastating news we've received lately from people in other countries. Obviously, there's a hurricane in Haiti, and I think in situations like that, we have more ability, it feels like, to tangibly help. I mean, maybe send a check to a certain organization, or our denomination being on the grounds, helping clean up the rubble. And it feels like in this kind of situation, there's not all of that opportunity to go in and make an impact directly right now by dropping water or food and all those resources. And I think some of those things will come. But I think one of the difficult parts right now is we want to jump on helping tangibly, and that's good. But what we lose track of sometimes is what you're saying is prayer is our most powerful resource. Like, we can send food, we can do a lot of those things, and we should do a lot of those things to care for the orphans and the widows and what Jesus has called us to. But prayer is the only thing that's going to change the situation ultimately. We can bandage it for a little while, we can prolong lives, but this is not a battle against flesh and blood. You know, that the people that are deceived and that are members of the Taliban are not, they're not our enemy. You know, it's a real enemy. There's a spiritual warfare that's happening here. And the only way to break some of those strongholds, to have real lasting peace and real lasting hope in this situation is through prayer, and our hearts breaking for these people that are created in the image of God. And I think that's what's painful when we see, some of the painful images that are coming from there, knowing that they're created in the image of God and that people are destroying their lives and all of that. But everybody that's there is an image bearer of God and deserves it. It's something we can't do, is this spiritual battle that we have to continue to submit to the Lord in prayer. And so I'm grateful for
the two other things. So we've shared with Alex, an organization that we know and trust that is working on the ground in Afghanistan, that they can use funds, they can use resources. For security reasons, we don't want it publicly shared, but Alex has that information. And secondly, there are people in the community in Omaha that are affected by this, not just people that have been overseas workers, but I have never served in the military, but I have friends that were deployed in Afghanistan, and they have, a whole different complex set of emotions. They can also use your prayer or you reaching out to them and, offering to talk or help right now. There's also, there are Afghan refugees everywhere in America that have been fled the country over the last 60 years because of all the problems. So there are Afghans bound to be in your neighborhood or in your schools, in your life in some way, that this is a great opportunity to introduce yourself to them, pray for them, ask how you can help them, build relationships with them so that you can start to have the relationship so that you can share Jesus with those people also.
Yeah,
so
not to fear them.
Yeah. There are so many ways to apply this, not just to Afghans, but to whatever situation, like you were saying, Haiti or whatever else happens in our world in the next, 6 to 10 months, that you can specifically pray. You can pray for specific people, try to find Christians that are working in those areas and see what they need.
Yeah. Well, I thank you for your time, for jumping on this conversation and just helping us better understand what's happening there, how to better pray for people. Like you said, you've shared some of that information. So if people want to reach out to us and kind of get some more of that information on some specifics and the organizations they can reach out to or whatever, then they can reach out to me and we can go from there and helping network that. So we'll continue to be praying for you all as you lament, as you grieve, as you see real images and hear real stories of people that you love that that are suffering from this, that have been killed at the hands of these things in the past. And so we'll be praying for you and praying that the Lord continues to strengthen you as you speak life and encouragement into the people that you're connected with there. So thanks for your time.
Thanks, Alex.
Thanks, Alex, for taking some time to do that. I know if anyone watched this on video, because the person you were talking to wanted to remain anonymous, it was a little bit awkward because it's mainly just you talking to your laptop. But it still was incredibly valuable. I mean, we've had a conversation, offline about this and just how impactful some of these, what we learned through this situation and learned through being able to talk to someone who has some firsthand experience and understanding.
Yeah. And I would say even in that conversation that we had, because of some of their feelings towards the security risk, which are true, and their connections and ties to people there and having been there, there's even, in our conversation before that with the three of us and that gentleman and his wife, we were even able to hear a little bit more. And it was good for me personally, because this has been a heartbreaking situation. I think some of the famous pictures you've seen are 600 people, I think is the number that were crammed in an airplane.
600 plus,
bodies jumping off of airplanes and things like that. And so just in a day of social media, it breaks your heart even more because you're able to see real faces with this and not just hear this is happening over there, which I even feel like when I was a kid and after 9/11, you didn't get to see quite the faces and the images and things like that in the middle of it. And so it's been a heavy time for all that. And so it was just valuable to hear from them, to listen, get more perspective, hear, from what they're hearing from people really on the ground, and the prayer requests. That's always helpful for me, and not just generic prayer, which I think is powerful, but like how to pray for people. So
those specific prayers.
Yeah. I mean, for you listening, or like as a mom, Jess, like what I know as we've talked about this,
Yeah.
it's been heavy on you.
Yeah,
you
it has.
commented on social media this week about just the feelings around it.
I feel like this, for some reason, this situation, looking at everything that's happening, has just hit me very hard, and I haven't known how to process it. And this, for me, this episode was very important for me as I have processed what's going on, because I think the first day everything was happening, it was happening kind of in real time, and now there's a lot of opinions from different news sources coming in. And so just hearing, this is what's happening there, this is what it's like, this is a little bit of the history to take into account, has been helpful for me as I process. And I think just my heart is broken, and I'm still searching for what does that look like, because I want to help. And I think the specific ways of praying are very powerful, and we kind of discount prayer in times like this, or we just say like, hey, I'll pray for you, or I'm going to be doing that. But really praying those specific prayers for that country has been a good way that I've kind of been processing it. But it's kind of developing in real time. Like, we're not sure what's going to happen next. And I think that's one of the reasons we wanted to do this, is we want to have some understanding as this continues of how we can process and how we can be talking about this from the correct perspective of understanding too. So,
and there's just, I think in this day and age where the world is so small, where we are connected to everything that goes on, it's so hard to have emotional capacity for every event that takes place, because I know there's the earthquake in Haiti, and it's like there's so many things that are heartbreaking, and how do you have an adequate response to it? And I could see a cynical secular response to prayer being, well, that isn't much, you're not doing much, like that. I could see that, and I think I understand why they would take that stance. Like, I get that, but it's also like, as a Christian, this should be something that we are practiced in and something that we value. And I know I'm guilty of not valuing it as much as I could. And I'm sure there are others who are listening who are in the same boat, where it's like, these prayers can be incredibly valuable. And at this point, when there are so many things that we are faced with in this ever shrinking world, how else can we react sometimes? I mean, there's only a finite amount of resources. There's only a finite amount of money you can give. There's only so much energy you can exert to everything around the world. But one thing, that we can contribute to is prayer. And I think that, it convicted me a lot to hear that, because even hearing him say, well, find a picture in an article and print it out. And pray for that person. And it's just like, wow. And even for him to say, find someone in the Taliban, pray for them, a picture of them, and pray for them. And I think that's the American viewpoint sometimes, is just to be like, there's good and evil. Taliban is evil. I don't know why necessarily, but that's what I learned after September 11th. So that's what I believe. That's my stance. Yeah. And praying for your enemies can be very difficult. And I think even that gut reaction to someone hearing that, it could, maybe be a negative reaction at first when they hear that. But man, what a powerful practice to get into.
Yeah. And he shared, that's their perspective. It's the people that they know. And he, even when we talked a little offline, was like, and I don't have the perspective of an American soldier that lived in Afghanistan and saw one of my comrades die next to me, at the hands of people in the Taliban and at the hands of terrorists. So they were offering that perspective, but they also have the perspective of, they've got friends that have gotten out over the last couple days, and then they've lost friends, due to some of the horrific things that have been going on. And so just providing that perspective.
Well, they personally just have such a heart for the Afghan people in general. So that makes a big difference.
Yeah. And so just grateful to hear from them, and grateful that they're a resource that, when all this was happening, they were some of the first people I thought of. Like, I want to get information from them and hear that, rather than just the media sources. And because we're so, it's crazy. It's just another reminder how fast we turn from grieving to blaming in our country. Like, it seemed like there was this moment of unity where everyone's like, this is terrible. And then, like, I don't know how many hours later, they're we're pointing fingers at. So That's frustrating.
Yeah, it is. And it just becomes political right away, and we have to point the blame at someone. And yeah. Well, there's still a lot to process there, and we'll continue to process it. And I mean, full disclaimer, this was recorded on Wednesday, so you're listening on Friday, and a lot of things could have changed. So if that's the case, then, you know, we're not fortune tellers. But we do appreciate everyone listening, and appreciate our guests for coming on and sharing what they could. But if you have any questions or concerns, you want to reach out to us, you can do that at social media at CCC Omaha, or you can send us an email to podcast@cccomaha.org, and we'd love to hear from you. Until then, we'll talk to you later.